Walking and walking.
I'll get going.
Good evening and welcome to our second tri-board meeting today, which is Tuesday, February 4th, 5th. Welcome, thanks for coming, and you want to join us as we pledge our small flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does everybody have things? Paul or Kathy had sent out the education, and they're right there if you don't have them. And then Kathy sent, and then what we did today that Kathy was able to give you was, printout for us was the, right behind me, and I know, I'm sorry I didn't use the new fancy screen system. I will next time, I promise. But you all have one in front of you if you can't see the little paper one that the building department was nice enough to print for us today. I think what I'd like to do and start with is that I think I'd just like to say that we should all, and I do, appreciate the work that all department heads and departments do when crafting their budget, and understand that they're only looking to provide the best service they can for our residents. So I think that's important to note, whether we think it's too much or too little. I think we shouldn't be negative toward what they're requesting, because their job is to do the best they can for the people they serve. Our job as elected officials is to weigh that with what we think our residents are willing and able to afford today and going forward. So I'm hoping tonight we can exchange ideas about this year's budget and hopefully reach consensus regarding such. And in an effort to do that, we have charts that show us very clearly what we're spending in the year that we're living in, and the proposal for the coming year as they are so far. Remember, this is very early in the process. Mike hasn't had a chance to work his magic with his numbers. Board of Ed has not yet completed their work on these numbers. So it's a good time for us to kind of take an overall broad look at this.
Yes.
Oh, the pie chart, I'm sorry, right up here, Barb. But first, you know what I wanted to do? I asked Mark if he could address, we had a question at the last meeting about master plan. It's right there. About a master plan. Elizabeth, did you get one of these too?
Yeah.
Would you like one? We have a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah, grab them. Whoever didn't get one.
You want me to hand them out?
You didn't know you had to work.
Thank you for Barbara for being our person that passes things out. Last week, I think it might have been
It's actually a gentleman.
Joanne or Nancy. Oh, we had somebody in the audience who's not here tonight that was asking. No, but we were talking about a master plan and how we should have one, and then we were discussing it later, and we do have one in the form of the Plan of Conservation and Development. And I just wanted to have Mark share with you, because he worked on that, some of the things that were in that plan.
Okay, I guess gonna go back. Originally, back in, I think it was 1989, it was one of the first Plan of Conservation Developments was done. We got remiss in that time frame and went about 15 years before we revised it. Since that time, we've been following what the state guidelines are. State guidelines is to update your plan of conservation and development every single year. Through that time, if you go back to the original one, it did call for an update to the school system, which you're sitting in. So the town did follow it, updated the school system. The other plans have called for a constant update of the roads, which is ongoing, checking and monitoring the lake, which is ongoing, and also an update to facilities. It's ironic that the I think it was 89 plan called for an update of the police department because they said it was too small back in 1989. We got there, it took a little time, but we are getting there. So, and we've also, in between there, and it was under, when I was with Barbara and she was chair, we did a facilities study where we had a group go out and review all the facilities and come up with a plan of what we need. Boilers at Center School were top of the list. We didn't do that right away because of the fact we were still looking at turning that to the town hall, and it would have been a waste of money. Now we are upgrading. We put it forward. So to say we don't have a plan is totally false. We do. It is looked at constantly. Planning and zoning is constantly looking at that and making additions to it and upgrading it. The formal redo is every 10 years where they present it to everyone. But it's up there, it's on the website. Anybody who doesn't know about it should look at it, review it, and you'll find that this town does follow it, and we are. We don't follow it to a T, we can't. It's a financial impossibility to do everything all at once. But we do pick away at it and get it done.
I think that's good to know. I think a lot of people don't even know that exists, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, thank you, Mark, for that background, because that's also true. I know Nancy Oakley said she couldn't be here, sent me a message relaying stuff, and I think when it goes to when that came up, and I think in that discussion we talked about that green, yellow, red chart that Paul had come up with. Look, and it came up at our last Board of Ed meeting after the last tri-board meeting. I think it was Alana asked the question, because we talked, we're digging into our budget, and all the administrators had presented their budget to Paul, which he incorporated put into us. I had asked them the question, is there something not in this budget that you really want, you really need for your school? And I think Alana asked the question, well, on the flip side, is there something they can do without? Which was a good point, and it got into this discussion of the green, yellow, red categories. The green is what Paul and the administrators feel is a priority and needs to be done now. Not that the others aren't priorities, but we can work on it. So with the conservation of the plan and development, can those items be put into categories like this? That things that are immediate that need to be done to address, or yellow that we're going to work in the next few years, and the red in the next 5+ years. And be put out into a plan publicly, like you said, people don't know about the plan of development. So to get this information out in a planned fashion.
It could be extrapolated easily from the Plan of Conservation and Development, which is a pretty lengthy document.
Yeah.
And just as a standalone, because quite honestly, I think it would be probably easier to highlight the few items that are on there. You guys have many, obviously it's a whole different system. But I would think that if I asked Mike that we might be able to just take out of the, so that somebody that doesn't have to look for page 37 on the plan of development, just have it be a document that calls it the town's master plan. And you can check off what's in progress or what's been completed.
I think the prioritizing part of it where I would be concerned, because that's not really the job of the staff, that's the job of our community.
No, I think if you could extrapolate it out, we could all take a look at it and come up with some suggestions.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, a lot of them have been begun. And then if there are some that should be added, they could be added in this format. Tri-board meeting is a great opportunity for these us elected officials to say, can we add a new track onto this, or can we add whatever there's a new stop sign, whatever needs to be done. I think that would be
working document. Yeah.
That would be a very working document done with the incorporation of everybody and not entirely focused on development and conservation. But it is, I think it's good to know that we have one and that we've been following it, and we could certainly get that page and bring it forward to. It wouldn't have to be something that's done before budget time, but it could be another reason for this group to get together to discuss that.
It should be easy to do, because as you go through it, there's, after every section, there's bullet points as to line items of what they suggest, planning and zoning suggests being done.
Good. Well, you know, Mike, if we could just get that and distribute it to this group, and then we'll set a date, it doesn't have to be till March or April, but set a date to sit down and discuss just that. Good idea, thank you. Anybody else have any comments about, or further questions about Mark's very thorough report? Okay. If we start, if you don't mind, with the pie chart, just to give us an idea of what we're living in right now, which is a mill increase of 0.89. I'm sorry, I should cross those out. Does everybody have one in front of them so that they can follow along? Oh, wait. Sorry, I didn't do that well. Apparently, I've been working on this all day. Ready, set, go. What we're living within right now is your first pie chart. We had a mill increase finally approved, 0.89, which brought our mill rate to 32.21. The total budget is up on the top, 45 million, 45.5 million. Our proposals that have come to us so far, again, this is without having been gone through by Council, Finance, or Board of Education necessarily, is the second pie chart, which shows us a mill increase of 1.95, total mill rate of 34, and proposed spending of almost, well, 47 and a little more than $500,000, so about $2 million more than last year.
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry? Sure.
is this being proposed, or is this just in the process of
It's in
being created?
process.
The operating budget, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, the operating budget's in process, just because of the way our timing works for the budgetary process. The department heads just submitted it last week, so this is their submission.
And what is the magic date when you would come with your proposal?
Yeah, it would be March 1st.
I couldn't hear that exchange.
March 1st. March 1st.
It should also be noted that the bond that we're proposing for capital is included in the debt here. So that's not an additional thing that's included in here, as is revenue projections. So if you go to the second page, maybe it's on the back, is that what you're Kathy, on the back? You'll see in terms of percentage increases, education is looking at a 2.6% increase, which equals in money $785,000 increase. The town is looking, department heads are looking for an 8.7, which equals $932,000. Conversation this morning with Mike indicates that he will likely get his budget to 4%, which would equal if you have your pens out and want to note this, that would equal a $432,000 increase. That being said, if he eliminates $500,000 out of department head requests, that reduces our budget, our mill rate by nearly $500,000. Our mill is still 1.1, Jeff, am I right?
Yeah,
A little, okay. So that could bring the proposed mill rate down to about 1.5, I would say, if Mike is successful in bringing it to 4% or less. Debt service is debt service, $3 million, and it stays flat this year. Jeff, jump in if I say any of this incorrectly. 3 million. The capital is a 54% increase, which includes, and I don't have that in front of me, but it, first of all, we did this last week too, and I meant to bring the list. It's
800,000 for the radio.
the what?
800,000 for the radio.
No, not the bond, but just capital in general, which you weren't at every one of those meetings, so I shouldn't be looking at you. Doc Brown was, and he was not here. Dean, we have the computers, some school computers, we had road,
There's road repairs, there's repairs to some of the school buildings, I believe there's
asbestos removal.
asbestos removal for some of the school buildings. What else is in there? I believe there's a couple cars that we need for both the police department and fire department. I believe
You'll all see a more detailed version. I just want to give you the highlights. I'm not looking, we're not here obviously to discuss specifics. We're here to discuss generalities. So if Mike is, okay, the other thing I want to tell you, I also talked to, Mike talked to some folks at the Council of Small Government, COG, and we should all be aware that there is not a formal proposal, it's not a bill yet, but there is talk about getting rid of, phasing out the ECS money over a 5-year period. So if you thought regionalizing schools was a bad enough story, and by the way, when they regionalize us, they are taking Marlboro out of RAM and giving them to us. Just wanted to let you know that. I don't know who came up with that plan, but
It's based on the probate maps.
Yeah.
is that what they use? Is probate math? That's funny. Because I thought, not funny, I think RAM already is regionalized. So anyway, just to keep in mind that this year, you know, Irene already gave us last week her kind of prediction about ECS, and it didn't look great for the coming year. So I think we need to just keep that in mind and make sure that we attempt to be as self-sustaining as we can when we prepare our budgets, because just counting on the state, unless somebody has better information than that about what the state's going to do with ECS.
Well, I don't think any bill that just comes up, I mean, it takes a lot. We can't make any predictions either way on bills that come to the floor. So many of them come to the floor and they never go through, so.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying the ECS one's going to be terrible.
Not in one way or the other.
But the point is that somebody's talking about it. That's kind of creepy for our budgets.
Talk about a lot of things that are creepy.
Anyway, I think if we were going to talk about consensus, one of the things we're also not the in the weeds group, we are the generalities group. If we were looking at a 1.5 mil increase, what do you think? Do you think that's something that would be amenable to people or not?
That's too high.
Okay, so Joshua?
Too high.
I hate to go at it and start there, you know, to begin with a number and then try to make it work. I think if you come up with a 1.5 and then you agree it's too high, then we have to.
Well, I think a good exercise for us would be to decide as a group that we think the 1.5 wouldn't fly, or it would, but whatever. So say we said it wouldn't fly. That's the information we want to send back to the Council of Finance and the Board of Education when we get a chance to look. We haven't seen Mike's budget. Mike hasn't even finished his yet, but I think that's information that would be good for all of us to have. And it would be nice if we could decide at least a general idea of where we all think we should be with the mill rate, because that's all your taxpayers, unless you know other people than I do, look at is that number. So how do we make that work? And we're not here to tell anybody how to make it work. We're here to suggest that is that reasonable? Is it too high? Is it too low?
Chair, do you know what the average home price is, appraised price in East Hampton?
Timmy's asking if anybody knows the average home price in East Hampton.
Yeah, the average appraised home price.
Joanne's not here, she's our
I think
realtor.
we actually figured about
Dean's here.
250?
250.
For assessment
Yeah.
purposes, about 200.
About 200?
Yes.
I'm just wondering what the average dollar amount would cost in income, you know?
If we did a 1.5 mil increase, and your average home was assessed at 200,000, Jeff? Sorry, you play with that, Ted. Ted, you want to say something?
About 210.
I can't commit to whether it's too high or too low because we don't have enough info. And I want to talk to the voters and read the paper and talk to voters and go through meetings, and the public comment is very, very important to me. The more
Well,
people that can speak under public comment, the better it is.
Well, that certainly is coming
That's my
out.
bottom line. I want to hear the voters. Because we went through 4 referendums last year, and I guess we need to read the tea leaves.
And I think we're all trying to avoid that from happening again.
I still wouldn't like to put a number on it now either. We have no idea. Maybe in a month we could revisit it and say we're at.
I think the only concern is that we've got to have decisions made in March.
Ours is due by the end of February, March 1st.
Yes.
What's the date first?
March 1st. So we have 2
March
meetings.
1st.
We have next Monday, and then the last meeting in February is when we will finalize our budget to present.
Mike?
To answer Mr. Fiegel's question, it's $34 a month or $410 a year.
$34 a month, or about $410 a year for the average home.
At 1.5.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just relay, again, another thing to Nancy, I asked her any
Oh,
info
it's
she
at
wanted to share.
195, I'm sorry, it's not at 1.5, that's at 195.
Okay, it's a 195.
Yeah.
Thank you.
195 equals
410.
410.
410 annually for a $200,000 plus house. Assessed house. I'm sorry, Chris.
So let me just relay this, because it's what we're talking about. And again, this is from Nancy Oakley. She thinks people want value for their tax dollars. Doesn't necessarily mean focus solely on having the lowest mill rate. People want to feel confident that their local taxes are being spent in a reasonable way to invest in East Hampton's future. So I think it kind of goes along with, I think Ted just mentioned it, without seeing everything. And again, it goes back to that conservation of plan and development. What are the priorities to go towards the future? What's being addressed now and what needs to be addressed? And how are we getting there?
We took a big chunk out of that this year.
We did.
Yeah, you did.
We were building a new town hall, police station, and Board of Ed building. It's been talked about for years, and finally it's coming through. This building was on the plan of development for a long time, and it's getting done. It is done. And we have the lake you have to worry about, a 9-point plan for the lake. That hasn't really been funded as well as it should be, but that's a big concern for a lot of people. So these are things, and we've located water sources in the town that maybe a future generation of East Hampton residents can plug into if they want to have a water system. But we plan for that too. So a lot of things have been planned out for the years, and they're coming to put together last couple of years. So we took a big chunk out of the plan of development that once things need to be done. I think we should be congratulated for that. A lot of things have been put on the back burner for too long. We talked about it, and finally it's getting done in the last couple of years.
I agree.
Barbara, I'm sorry, Bridget.
I think we also have to look beyond just this year. What does the planning look like? And it's a good guess, because you need to go out 5 years and say, oh my God, we're going to be at a mill rate of 45. So I don't think you can just look at this year. We've got to look at these other projects and go out probably 5 years to say, okay, I don't think the people can handle, a 45, mill rate.
Can I also say something? I think that sometimes when you think a 45 mil rate, like you throw out a thought process of, well, it could be like by a 45 mil rate by that time. At that point, we don't know where, house values will be. We don't know who starts coming into the town. You just can't unilaterally say we just can't afford that
I'm
at
not
that
saying-
time.
I'm
There's
not
cost
saying
of
it's
living
exact.
that are built in, all of those things have to be accounted for.
It's not an exact science,
No,
but
right.
it's a way to get a feel for the path we're going down and are we picking the right projects? And as Jeff or Chris just said, they want to know, is it being spent wisely or is it wasteful?
Yeah.
So I think when you do projections like that, it's not a perfect science, but doing it year by year is not a perfect science either.
Right. And I also think the more education that we get out about, in the most simplistic terms, about where the tax dollars are actually going, what we're accomplishing, what you're getting, I think the more and more we do that, the more educated the taxpayer will be. And will want to, say, oh yeah, well, I want it here and I want it there, or I don't want. I just think we can do a lot more in that respect.
I'll agree on 2 points. I'll agree with Lois and some other comments that the town, all of us, not the council, but the town should sing their own praises and splash on the web page, your tax dollars at work. Bring it to town hall, have that picture up there. Here's everything that we funded with last year's taxes. But then I also agree with Bridget that when you're looking at mill rate increases every year and you're 2%, in round numbers for an average family, they're looking at that and saying, hey, my taxes are going up $1,000 every 2 years. That's too much for a working family to handle. So you really gotta watch your messaging on both fronts. You gotta say you're getting value for what you're paying, but we're going to be conscious that we're not squeezing your wallet too hard to get these things as well. So part of that is having a well thought out plan on here's what we're going to achieve in incremental steps, both at the town level and within the school budget. Here's the things we can achieve without exceeding or being too disconnected from the rate of what wages are doing, what state taxes are doing, what everything. So it's a big picture, but both, you need both.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Steve?
Excuse me. I think there's several things that we need to consider. One is, first of all, not to get ourselves too far ahead of the game, and maybe seriously consider deferring or delaying our first budget vote until after the legislature is active.
Can I just interrupt that thought, because we've talked about that in the past. Is there statutorily, Mike, something that prevents us from that?
No, it's in our charter.
It's a charter issue. So we can't go any later than for the first referendum of what,
It's
June?
supposed to be in May.
Is it May or June?
It's May. Second week of May.
That's the problem right there with that.
We could break the charter, and by the time we were called on it, it would be passed. We would vote.
No, but can't the council do like a majority vote and overrule an act?
Mike,
Like an ordinance, so to speak.
that's a very good question, Mike. Are we able to?
It's the second time Chris has asked that
Right,
question
right.
today. I don't have the answer yet. So, yeah.
Anyways,
Check on that, because I do think the way we do it is out of sequence,
we do.
because we're trying to plan on something and we have no idea what the state's doing, and that puts us in a very, very bad position.
So I think if we could juxtapose when we actually vote on the budget, we'll have a better feel of what we can do.
It's a great idea.
The second thing I think is important in light of that is what is the legislature, the governor going to do? They say they want to fix the budget situation in Hartford. We need to know what the impact of that is going to be to the towns. And maybe it will be beneficial, maybe it won't. The last go-around had proposals that were going to significantly increase our bottom line with no additional source of revenue, things like teachers' pensions, as I recall. So the longer we could hold off.
What are you thinking, just from having sat in those seats yourself?
Like
What are you thinking, I mean, the state legislature seats, what are you thinking would be a best guess for you time that we might have more information?
Probably the end of the second week in June.
So mid-June, you're thinking? We just want to write this down, okay. Does anybody else think that's a good idea? Because I do.
Yes.
Yes,
Just
yes?
before school gets out. School gets out in mid-June, so you can have the referendum before school gets out.
Yeah.
So that we're not reopening
Yeah,
the school?
that's, because you don't want people taking off. You know what I mean? If they're going on vacation or whatever, you want them around.
Well, so mid-June works with that, correct?
Early June.
As long as it's before the last day of school.
And that fluctuates depending on snow days.
Well, I think you can probably be safe to use
Snow
the
days.
current, I mean,
We're at the
current, what,
June
snow
13th
days?
right now.
What, snow days?
But right now it's what?
June 13th.
But if the state's
Why
not
June
done,
13th not have already?
Does, what do you think?
if the state hasn't ruled and
Hold
decided
on,
and
Janine's
done,
got
what
the floor here,
difference does
people.
it make?
Go ahead, Love.
If we're saying that we're gonna override, we're gonna say, okay, you know, we can disallow what the charter says, then aren't you going about a little backwards? I mean, like, it doesn't matter. It's so, we say, okay, we need it done by June, but if the second week in June, or June 13th, or whatever it's gonna be, but if the state isn't done, we're right in the same
You're right.
boat.
Oh, absolutely
Like,
true.
why even postpone it? Because you're not, you don't have any more information.
I think just for the fact of maybe getting more information
Yeah.
and the direction the state's going.
Here's the deal, we have a better shot at having information
Yeah.
in mid-June than we do in mid-May.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, I'm also not saying that it has to be June 13th. I'm saying if we were to find out the legalities of breaking the charter and going and doing it later, I think we'd want to leave ourselves, I wouldn't pick a date, I'd want to leave ourselves flexible to say, when the state has theirs, we'll reconfigure ours,
Regardless of the last day of school,
regardless of what?
of the last day of school.
Well, I mean, we were just looking at
Exactly.
arbitrary.
I think what they're
dates,
saying
that's
is it
all
would
I'm
be nice to be able to do it then before people go on vacation
Right,
while the
right.
school's still open. If, that would
It
certainly
would.
not
Mid-June.
hold us to that
Right.
date. Right?
saying. Right,
People can always take an absentee ballot to vote on the budget.
exactly.
So everyone, gee, we have another consensus. So excited. Everyone is liking the idea of moving the referendum to such time as the state has determined their budget. Do we all say yes to that?
Yes.
I like it. Okay. Thank you, Dean. Great idea. Now, what was your third point? You have a list over there.
I'm just making a couple of comments. For instance, Bridget's thoughts of a 5-year plan.
Mhm.
We will have a better idea from the state what they're planning, what they're doing. They give us some insight on where we go with that kind of thinking as well.
Good point. I think it would be nice to combine Chris's idea and Bridget's idea. Like we get that piece of paper from the plan of development and we'll certainly circulate it. And then we all need to think about, while we're looking at that, like the topic of that meeting, whether it not be till July, whatever, would be what our plan is and now what we'd like to see in 5 years. So we're kind of off the topic of the budget, but as far as planning, I think this is a good idea. In that meeting, we could combine those two thoughts, or those two ideas, and talk about it after we're done with the budget. Is that fair to say for everybody? Is there a reason to do it before our budget is voted on and all that? No, right? So after referendum, we'll do whatever, we can reconvene at that point and talk about that. Okay, Jean, did you have one more thing on your list?
Yeah, I think we need to start getting some public comment and information out regarding the budget process and what's included. As you know, Melissa, from the Capital Committee, we have a list of things that have been left for too long. Like the Center Street boiler, that's a ticking time bomb. And we're going to propose that to be bonded. We have a new fire truck.
Didn't we already do that?
What's that?
Didn't we already do the boiler at Sarah School?
No,
It's in the bonding package that we we have sent to you for approval.
And they approved for the town meeting.
And
March
it's been
11th.
approved, and we're going to a town meeting in
Yes.
March 11th.
He's saying get this information out, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Because it's all incremental and part of the budget, different components. I think it's important for people to understand that a fire truck isn't just for the fire department. Fire truck is for public safety. A plow truck, the importance of that is that you get the roads cleared when it snows. Fortunately, this year we haven't had a lot of snow. But the fire trucks and the ambulances can't get out unless those roads are plowed. And the school buses can't run unless the roads are plowed. So everything is interdependent and shouldn't be looked at in isolation of one budget versus another budget.
It's ongoing. Kind of like Jared said about a PR marketing blitz about what's going on, what's been done, and what's happening.
I think some weekly articles from our good friends at the press.
I would, I think.
Would be helpful,
Oh,
explaining some of those needs.
Absolutely. If anybody has any suggestions about how to better publicize the March 11th, am I right on that date, Mike? March 11th is our town meeting?
I think
For the
that's what
bond.
we're thinking about, but it hasn't been approved, I mean, it hasn't gone to the council yet to be approved yet, so we can't definitively say that's gonna happen.
But that's what we picked. I
That's
just
what
want, I just
I
want,
believe that's what was gonna be.
March 11th would be the Monday that we would take it to a town meeting when the council says yes next week. And so if anybody has any ideas about how to better publicize that that's going to be taking place, I would gladly hear them, or I don't need them tonight necessarily, but send them along, because we'll do whatever we can do, and so
Well, I think
we're
some,
ahead.
I think sometimes.
Just on that note, sorry,
That's okay.
on the March 11th, I know we had talked and we've already booked it for 6 o'clock for that night.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a book, so I hope the council passes it.
I know, I hope they do.
Very presumptuous of us.
That's right.
I think the marketing, if you will, where the tax dollars are going can be a double-edged sword. I don't know. It's, geez, look at all the money we just spent on the school. Now look at this beautiful town hall we're building. And by the way, we need some more money. It's
That could very well be the thought process. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's a fatigue, it's taxation fatigue. The general vote out there is
Well,
fatigue.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Ted's saying too. He wants to hear from people and public comment, and that they will we're not bypassing that. That'll certainly happen. But I do think that if taxpayers are going to start to say that, and we've got your school, we're doing the boiler, we're doing the town hall, we're just bought another dump truck or whatever, plow truck. Enough is enough. That's why I suggested that we think about, and we don't have to make a decision tonight, but I think we better think about whether or not, regardless right now of expecting them to say something else in public comment, whether or not we're pushing that envelope with even a 1.5. Because I think you might be.
So I think you
Maybe
have
it would
to
be
start
for me.
the conversation, I think you have to start the conversation. I think the more you educate, it might be a double-edged sword and some people might not like it, but the conversation can at least happen. The discussion can go back and forth. You can get an idea. Just because it's a double-edged sword doesn't mean you don't do it. I think we all can be better, letting people know on our own social media places where the meetings are, when they're happening, what's going on. I just think the more information is always better. There's always going to be
Absolutely.
dissension and going back and forth and all that. I still think that's okay.
And getting the correct information out, because once a rumor starts.
And correcting if it's not correct.
Well, we have rumor busters on our town webpage. I don't know what else. If
They
there's
changed
other
to ask the
needs.
manager a question, but yeah.
And people have utilized it, because I've seen it. I've seen questions on there, I've seen
They have.
people suggest doing it, and then I've seen it posted, the answers right on Let's Talk East Hampton.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
Let's Talk East Hampton can be a really great thing, as much as we all complain about the back and forth sometimes, and there is that. I also think it's a great resource for a lot of people. I do. I mean, people get snarky on it, and we need to remember to maintain a professionalism and not, name call and all that other stuff.
That's why I don't read it, sorry.
But, well, that's okay.
Sorry.
That's
I can't do it. I
okay.
can't do it.
That's okay.
But I'd rather people go to the town's webpage
But they're
and
not,
get
but
factual
most people aren't going to.
information.
They're gonna look for there, so you have to just admit that that's a place where people get information.
If you want.
Whether
the
you
real-
like it or not.
Like Joanne's saying, if you want the facts, you go to the town's webpage. Sorry, that's where you go. And
Anywhere, I mean, you could go anywhere as long as the information.
the Board of Ed webpage, and you can do whatever, and ours links right to yours, so it's not a problem to get to either of them.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Jeff. Jeff, the Town Hall Police Department, when does that bill kick in? Is that next budget cycle, 2020?
Some of it, there may be a small portion that kicks in 2020, but majority will be 2021, 2022.
And what's that going to be?
Not 100% certain right now.
Ballpark.
We're gonna feather it in. I'm not in the ballpark yet.
Okay. Just can't tell you.
Yeah, we don't even know what the final number is for the project yet, so.
Well,
we've got that.
You got approved at 19 million, correct?
Yeah, authorization.
So if you use the 19 million, because that is a fixed number, if it goes under, you're saving money, goes over, you gotta spend more. So if you use the 19 million, you should be able to project a number as to what that's gonna be, also factoring in the fact that the high school is gonna be going down some
Right.
on that payment. So you should be able to come up with a number on that.
Oh, sure I can. It's not doing it right now.
I think
Can you have that for us next meeting?
Yeah, it's probably gonna be,
We're talking about a mill and a half roughly, somewhere in there. Is that ballparking?
We saw $1.5 million for the high school first go-round, and that was a much larger project, so I wouldn't think it would be that high. Especially considering we got that good interest rate.
Well, you get state reimbursement that kicks in, so. it's
Yeah,
gonna be
but it was
very-
still,
it's gonna be
half of
very
the
close.
53, we were still at 25, this is still only 19, we're still less,
It's be a little less.
a little bit less, yeah.
But it may not, interest rates are going up.
interest rates have gone up too, and that's what we're fighting right now, is do we issue debt a little bit earlier and try to capture these lower interest rates? Or do we push it off, roll these notes, which is gonna cost us more interest, and then run the risk of interest rates rising, and that's gonna cost more money. So until in 1% could be $1 million.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to look at now to see if we can issue something now, or probably next September, have a small interest payment in 2020, and then a principal payment in 2021 for a portion of the project, and then something else probably 2021, 2022. So it's not going to be one issue all at once. It'll probably be most likely two separate issues.
Which again, the overall be an increase of,
I can pull the flyer that we sent out, which will have what we told the taxpayers when they were voting on it. So,
which will probably be higher because of the interest rate went up, correct?
yeah, most likely. Well, I probably use a conservative interest rate when I do my forecast, so hopefully we'll stay within that amount.
It'd be beneficial to have at least an idea or plan of what that would look like 2-3 years out ahead of time now, so that we can plan accordingly and not all double up on, big spending years.
Well, I think that's what we should be keeping in mind.
That's going along with our 5-year plan, what Bridget's talking about, is that we need to look at these, and we also need to factor in that we're gonna need roofs on the school, that's gonna come up with some, either middle or someone's gonna need a roof coming up. Fire department they want a new fire department, are we gonna be able to do that? I mean, these are things we truly need to sit down and start having conversations about, otherwise lo and behold, we're gonna have a fire department collapse and say, oh, now we need it. And I don't like being surprised like that.
But I think also, to add to your point, I think the 5-year thing includes looking at our debt, because if we're talking a $1.5 million increase this year, and then next year, we're gonna have whatever Jeff tells us at our meeting next Tuesday, will be added on to that, you better think about your 1.5 for this year. Because next year's won't be debatable, it'll just be your debt. And it's gonna have to be paid. So you don't wanna commit to 1.5 being too high, too much for the times that we're in. I'm willing to say that I think it is, but you all need to determine that for yourselves. But I think, now I think what's a shame, and we shouldn't wait till July to do this, is that Jeff needs to try to find us the best numbers he can with regard to that.
The average, we sent out our flyer, or the referendum post, we averaged it on a $200,000 home, it was going to be on average $220 a year.
For the
For the town hall.
240?
$220 a year at a home assessed at $200,000. We also use, there's annual grand list growth assumptions that we use as well that will all impact that. But
Okay, so the 1.9 that we're talking about, the first number this evening, right? 1.9 was an increase of 450.
195
410 a year.
was, I think it was actually 390.
And then the town hall will add that annual number?
On average, $220.
I can't hear.
220.
So now you've got 220 plus 410 a year, so now you're up to 630 a year starting next year, if we were to go with the 1.9 for the hell of it. Even if we go with 1.5, it's not about what, 575 a year increase with a 1.5 mil increase.
First year is going to be higher because the interest rate's higher.
Right.
And as you get down past the midpoint, it's going to start dropping down. So it'll be higher year 1, lower year 20, and it'll slowly go down. Just like with your with your mortgage, with your interest.
But I'm going to remind you, Jeff,
Spending in the town doesn't go down.
Right.
Yeah.
That may go down, but we'll absorb that money because never in the history of East Hampton, I think I'm correct when I say this, have we ever benefited financially from a decreased payment of anything. And that's a reality, people. So it may go down, but that spending level will stay the same. It always has. Or actually, I take it back. It's gone up. It doesn't stay the same. It goes up. And I think that's the harsh reality of debt. Anyway, we have about 10 more minutes. Kevin?
Madam Chair, Mr. Joka did a very nice job about a year and a half ago putting together a document that highlighted all of this in preparation for the vote for the town hall. And I'm wondering, Jeff, if you could unearth that document and just tweak it with the challenges that we're discussing tonight. Because it was quite interesting going through that document and seeing what the expectations would be for the community and how those expectations related to other things that were happening in our area. Even though this is a challenge, we really aren't as challenged as many of the other communities in the area. And it would be very helpful to see that document so that the boards that are sitting around here today and then eventually the public can appreciate, yes, there is an expense, but in relation to our counterparts around us, it isn't as great as one would imagine. Also, it does highlight, as you had stated, what the costs are going to be for the town hall. Because I can remember when people would ask, I'd say, oh, you won't see that bill until 2022. If that is possible to update that at some point, I think that would prove to be extremely helpful for everyone sitting around this table and all the people in the room, as well as the rest of the public.
After the meeting, I might have a copy on here, just want to be sure.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
The only, Madam Chair, the only thing that I just want to reiterate again, and I asked it my first question, we are very early into the game, and I appreciate the fact that we have met now twice. I regrettably wasn't here last week, and I appreciate all that we have already done. The Board of Ed typically is where they are. That's no surprise. Their calendar begins back in the middle of October. They're right on target to make their decision at the end of February. The fact that we have now seen a glimpse of what the administrators have submitted and department heads within the town is something that we typically don't see this early in the ballgame. We also have to keep in mind that because it is so early in the ballgame and our town manager has yet to bond with each of those department heads, that this is a very fuzzy figure. It isn't a figure that's solidified in any way. And my concern is that, and I appreciate the information here, but I would hope that it would be relayed in the press. But we're not talking about a 1.95 mil increase. This is without even looking at the budget. This is what was just handed in. And I understand why the department heads hand in what they hand in. They need to be able to share with you what the real needs are. That doesn't mean that we as a community can address those real needs, but we need to know what those needs are. We now know what those needs are, at least the bottom line. It doesn't mean that it will be the bottom line. And I think that needs to be clearly noted, that this is just the first opportunity, the first glimpse. And speaking of that, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways, that March 11th date and the town meeting, is any of that incorporated in any of this that we have here tonight, or is that over and above what's
No,
here?
I said earlier, he's incorporated that in the deck.
It's incorporated, okay, thank you.
Should we talk about reconvening? I know you guys have to make a decision by March 1. Is there any benefit? What would you like to do next as a tri-board? Other than get information from Jacques regarding future debt, so that we have that in our heads. But is there anything else is there a reason to meet again before that, Chris? What are you thinking?
Unless you guys, like I said, on the 11th and the 25th are 2 meeting dates where we as a board will be going through our recommendations based on Paul's proposal. So that there's...
So you don't make a decision till the end?
So the 25th, February 25th, will be our final vote.
Okay, good.
Of our budget to propose.
Then
So that
remind-
there's information to share with us, the direction or focus and what you're thinking that would be helpful.
Well, maybe we should plan to try to get together in March. Does anybody else think that's a valuable exercise or no? Communication, people, information.
I mean, I always
It's
think
nice
it's
that
a
we're
good
early.
thing when the
We're
three
never early.
boards are together. It's great. Like,
Yeah.
why not meet?
Then is there, would we like to set a date while we're all sitting here?
We have a lot of dates already.
I have to say, we're also, I'm sorry, what? Did something-
There's a lot of...
We have a lot of dates already, so March is when we meet.
Oh, for your board.
Yeah.
Oh, for your, because you guys are going to
Yeah.
be busy here.
Yeah, we meet twice
I don't wanna do that
a
too
month
much.
too for 2.5 hours. We'll squeeze it in somewhere.
I don't want to overwhelm the Board of Finance or anybody, so if that's,
Quite honestly, I think you should wait. Board of Ed's gonna get theirs done, let the Board of Finance do their job, and then if we want to have a meeting in between afterwards, that'd be more prudent than in the middle of them deliberating.
You guys finish usually by the end of March-ish, right?
We're supposed to vote 27th, March 27th.
So maybe, like I said, beginning of April, as it's going to the council.
now, is it, this question for you, since we're extending things here. I guess what I was trying to do is meet again before you guys made a final decision. And in April, you've already made it.
Okay,
And that's by charter as well.
got it.
When is the
Can
capital?
that be extended also?
Ask Mike. That was the first question I had for him.
Really? Can that, is there a possibility
I
of
just
that?
don't know yet. I need to.
Can you check? Because
You gotta read it up.
for years, we've been frustrated that we've had these deadlines that have been very difficult to come up with numbers that are adequate because we have not had information from the state. So why are we putting that on you when you're the most dependent on money from the state?
And numbers. I mean, our numbers
So,
can vary
okay,
within weeks.
I guess we're waiting on Mike for that one.
I'll be fast.
Because if we could do that, what would be, before he goes off and asks that question, what for you guys would be a reasonable date for you? If we could extend it to something that is,
Off the top of my head, I know one of the concerns, if we wait too long into June, July, then if there is an impact on our budget in terms of the staffing and teaching positions, and reallocating and if things have to be done. So I don't know if you guys, if we could extend instead of, putting another month, be good.
The Board of Finance is scheduled for
We are
the
already
week of March.
For us.
For us to present our budget.
Yeah.
And then,
Doesn't the Board of Education have to send out information to teachers that they could not be coming back?
by May 1, yeah.
May 1? By May 1 has to be made.
By May 1, we've got, so if we don't have a budget by then, we've got to anticipate anybody who could be let go and let them know.
does extending it from the end of March to the end of April, I guess that means, right? Does that help you, and does that month help you?
Well, I think what he's saying is we're on schedule for the end of March
March 15th.
to the Board of Finance to present our budget. So in
March
other words, we have,
15th.
from the end of February till we actually have to present it to the Board of Finance, we have 3 weeks. That it's just going to sit on the shelf and do nothing for 3 weeks. So maybe an extension of that, I don't know what 3 weeks is going to do in terms of our numbers, but.
Does it?
Yes.
Can I propose maybe a bit of a compromise, because the governor's budget is gonna be released in like the next couple of weeks, right? So when that comes out, we'll have a better idea where revenue estimates are gonna be and what's going on. With the governor and the House and the Senate seeming to get along right now, it should kind of move forward in a fairly copacetic way. So maybe if we wait just a little bit, see what comes out from the governor's budget, what those revenue estimates look like, and then we can make a decision whether we need to sit down and say, okay, let's, pull the reins back and wait a little bit on an actual vote so we get closer to actual revenue numbers or not. Maybe that's a way to.
Then could we ask you to communicate with all 3 boards when that information comes up? So we're not looking to reconvene as a group, but for you to send us information with whatever.
Once I get the governor's budget, I'll let it out to all of you.
And then if you feel, Chris.
I'm thinking it's not going to be a secret.
No, it's not. It usually is. What we do get though is we usually get a town-by-town run from CCM where they go and they boil down the actual budget and send that out. That's what's probably the most valuable to all of us. So once we get that, they can send that out.
Chris, does that work for you?
Well, we're just thinking that we're scheduled to present to the Board of Finance on March 15th.
March 29th.
March 29th.
I think the public hearing is on the 25th, Board of Education, Friday, March 29th. Unless you change, is that the?
It's not the March 29th. Okay.
March 29th is leaving out.
That's our schedule.
Yeah, they don't even have March 29th on their schedule.
But isn't that when they had picture schedules? There's 2 because,
We approved the second one at
Right.
the meeting.
right, so it's the second page.
Throw that away.
Not for my
Madam Chair, I'm not sure we have got that list of dates that we usually look at.
I know we don't have that list, we're a little behind the 8 ball.
Neither do we, that's what I'm looking at.
Well, we like that too.
Okay, so it is March 29th.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going off with what Mike just said about the governor's budget. Our last meeting in March is the 25th. That would give the Board of Ed 4 more weeks and hopefully more information from
4 more weeks if we did what?
If we did not vote on our budget at the end of February.
Gotcha.
And voted at the end of March, right before it's presented to the Board of Finance.
Kevin has a question.
Public hearing is scheduled for March 25th on that second calendar.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask the town manager to check on the March 1st date. I believe that's etched in stone. I don't think we can willy-nilly change that date. And I think it all is based on teacher contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to check that to make sure we can't alter that date. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I had to prepare with 7 other superintendents, and we were told it had to be in by the 1st of March. And it was a date that was fixed, had nothing to do with anyone sitting in this room. So we need to check to make sure we're not creating a problem for ourselves. Okay? March the 1st is a critical date, just as is the date when you begin teacher negotiations. Isn't it interesting that Middletown ends their teacher negotiations much earlier than we do? And guess what? Their budget is due much earlier than ours. So I think you need to look at that very carefully to make sure we're not creating a problem for ourselves. Not that I would like you to have another month. I'm just saying there is a reason why March the 1st is selected.
Well, we'll certainly check on that, because we're not going to violate anything.
So at this point, everything will wait on the answer to that.
And then Mike will communicate with all of us. Meantime, feel free to call one another and be nice. Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Motion to adjourn? Thank you all for coming.
That's good.